Hey folks, Chris McLean back with another episode. And on the show today, I have Suzette from SimpleMarketing.AI. And they help businesses solve their content marketing challenge by generating marketing content in minutes rather than hours using artificial intelligence. And it's available as an online subscription-based service. SimpleMarketing.AI's AI content engine generates original content, including blog and social media posts and emails from key phrases entered by the business. And we're going to demo this live on the episode today so you can get a feel for how this actually works. And SimpleMarketing.AI then supports the businesses also to use their content effectively in their content marketing academy. All very, very exciting and interesting. Pumped to get into this one. Suzette, thanks for dropping by.
Oh, thanks for having me. I always love geeking out on AI. It's great.
Yeah, it's super, super cool. I'm very, very interested to get into a live example and actually see how this works. But were you always sort of an AI tech geek? Where did you come to this from? How did Simple Marketing come to be?
Well, actually, Simple Marketing came about through a bit of a journey. I've actually run another company called Sensory 7 for 21 years that's done a huge amount of work with the Australian federal government and corporates and that sort of thing in the area of information management, content, and how we use information. So I've always been in that sort of area where that intersection of making complex systems simple. So not so much AI, but in the tech sort of area. But I moved to try to actually take that knowledge and move into the small business entrepreneur market about 4 to 5 years ago. And moving into that market meant that I had to market myself online, market my business, those sort of things. And I bombed spectacularly. I could not market myself or sell a $500 course to sell my life, to save my life. And so I very much understood the challenges that a lot of business owners go through and entrepreneurs go through trying to move online when you've been running this business that you're a genius at what you do, but we're expected to actually understand marketing and particularly internet marketing, which is an entire whole area in itself, moving online. And so when I always, because I have my other company was very much involved in technology and that sort of thing, and I actually like to geek out and a bit of a nerd myself, I always kept up with a lot of technology. And when I realized that AI technology had got to the point now where it could write indistinguishably from a human, I saw there was a really huge opportunity to couple my experience with managing and information and making complex systems simple for people with my fundamental understanding of how difficult it was for a small business owner to market themselves online when that's not their area of expertise. And that was sort of like a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's cool how these things kind of grow out of this combination of history and sort of what you're great at and some random challenge that you face and go, how do I overcome this thing? I've got this problem that I don't know how to surmount, but hey, actually, why don't I just build an AI app that does it for me? So how did you go about actually building this?
How I came about? What we did is I didn't actually build it. As you probably already gathered, I'm not an AI expert in that respect. Yeah. But what I did know is actually how to engage teams to do it for us. So we brought in we brought the CMO, Craig Tomlin and I got together and we interviewed for a CTO because we didn't want to have a situation where I was distracted managing a development team. We always very much going to get an outsourced development team to do this initially and then bring it in-house eventually. And so we brought on Aman Quatra, who has been fantastic as a CTO. And from that, he was able to then build a team both here in Canberra and also in Nepal. And so we've been able to very much bootstrap the development of the software and the platform from there.
Yeah, wow. So the most obvious question, when people start to hear about AI, there's probably a lot of us that have played with things like Otter.ai, where doing transcription and that sort of thing, and that's pretty good these days. Even the sort of stock standard to Google, YouTube, AI, automated generating captions and that sort of thing. We kind of understand that works okay. Sometimes it's doesn't quite capture exactly what you're saying. How this is kind of the next level though, right? This is me saying, here's some keywords about my business, and then it's going to go off and it's going to essentially act like me and write a post that sounds like me and my business and my expertise. Very without getting too technical, how is that possible? And sort of how accurately is that? And we're going to get into an example to show how this works, but yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd love to understand that.
I've got a very non-technical way to explain it to people.
Perfect.
So think of it this way. You have learnt a body of knowledge. So you have this body of knowledge that you already understand about a particular topic or industry. And from that topic, if you sit down to write something, you actually write from the knowledge that you and the experience that you have already developed. So the AI does very much the same thing. It's been trained on the entire internet, so it has a slightly bigger body knowledge than most of us as humans, but it definitely still has a body of knowledge. So what it does is when it writes the content, it actually creates and generates unique new content based on that body of knowledge. So it knows that if you're wanting to write something around marketing, around for small businesses, it can use a lot of that knowledge that it already has around what small business owners interested in marketing are interested in, and it can relate topics to it. So even though you might ask for one thing, it might actually generate something else related to that topic because it knows there's a high probability that your audience for that particular article is going to be interested in that. Now, the second part of it is, though, in regards to writing in your voice, it can. Now, our platform, the shared one, doesn't write in your specific voice. What it does is what's referred to as a typical LinkedIn post or a typical Facebook post. We can set it up for and we are talking to some organizations to actually seed it with their specific business, their particular voice. For example, I was talking to someone the other day who has a very specific way of doing his LinkedIn posts. He writes like a headline, and then he does a story, and then he does a message that the story conveys. And that is actually how he writes LinkedIn. So we've been able to replicate that within the system. Same way, sort of, for instance, if you actually were learning how to do or how to write a particular piece of content a particular way, and somebody gives you an example and you use that as the basis of how to write your piece of content, you don't copy it, but you use the structure at least as an idea. That's pretty much what the AI is doing. It's using the examples that we give it to actually write you something else. Now, one thing also about this is it's not about getting perfection in the first. It's about getting you to your first draft so that you can then build on it and add in your voice and add in your nuances as part of it afterwards.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's giving you it's kind of doing that initial research and layout and structuring piece first, and then you can just go in and kind of edit it out, put your tone, change a going to a gonna, a want to a wanna, all that kind of stuff, and give it your kind of the sort of, I guess, hyperbole and the personality.
Yeah, absolutely. It will give you personality, and in fact, for example, a Facebook post, it will actually inject a lot more personalities than, say, a LinkedIn post, because typically Facebook posts actually have personality. It just may not out of the in our shared environment at the moment, we are bringing some personas coming soon. It doesn't necessarily know what your personality is at the moment, so that's the only difference. But it will actually. One particular example is I gave it a Facebook post on kittens, and it wrote one of them with "cute" as one of the words because it knew that people write, sort of kitten ones very cute.
Wow.
So it does inject personality at times.
Wow. And it sounds like it's got some channel context as well. It's contextual to the different channels. And you mentioned that it's depending on the platform, it might change depending on what it believes people will react to or respond to. So how is it gathering that information? Is that coming from sort of conversion analytics or from engagement analytics? Is that feeding back into the AI as well?
At this stage, no, it doesn't even actually need that. It's been, as I said, trained on the entire internet. So it has already got a contextualization between information already from all of the content it's consumed. So it has, because there's so much content on a range, particularly, say, for instance, the examples I gave, which were like marketing for small businesses, there's a lot of content in particular areas. So that it gets its understanding from people are writing about this in a lot of ways, in a lot of locations. So it's a highly likely and highly probable that you're going to want this type of information as well when you're asking for that.
Right. Yeah, very, very cool. It's quite amazing that essentially a computer can replicate us now. And I can imagine that the benefits of this, of having your social media content literally auto-generated, makes it a lot faster to do bulk content and keep up with the amounts of content that we need to produce as entrepreneurs and business owners. So yeah, I can definitely see how it would be valuable. Yeah. Shall we get into an example? I think this is probably the best way to get in and see how this works, is to literally go in and see how this works. So for anybody that's listening to the podcast, maybe go check out the YouTube version so you can follow along and see what's happening on the screen. We'll try to tell you what's going on as much as possible, but yes, you won't quite capture the essence of it until you go and actually. So make sure you do go and check out the episode on YouTube to check out this example. We'll get this up on the screen now, and we'll get Suzette to take us through how this AI actually works.
Fantastic. So you and I talked about so we're going to do a LinkedIn post first.
Cool.
So, and we had a little bit of a chat about the topic, just so no one had to watch me typing. So I'm just going to do a quick search for the one that we were looking for, did before. And it was, how can a marketing agency use AI to write marketing content for their customers? So now, for everyone on this, we have not gone and pre-created the content. What we're going to be doing is generating the content live as we, in fact, while I'm talking, I'm going to press the button because it takes about 30 seconds or things to go through. And in fact, part of the reason why we actually have little sayings come up is because although 30 seconds is considerably faster than us as humans to write a first draft of a piece of content, it's a long time when you're sitting there waiting for that little line to spin around. So we, part of our personality is that we've injected some different little sayings. One of my favorites is, it's words, Jim, but not as we know it, which harks back to the fact that I'm a Star Trek nerd. And that sort of thing. So, but as it goes through,
you Trekkie or a Trekker, new gen or old gen? Just to get very, very nerdy and specific.
I quite like all of them. And in fact, I'm such a Trekkie that I actually go on the Star Trek cruise with them usually every year. And it's actually, so I get to actually hang out with a number of them from a number of the different series, which is fantastic. Okay, so let me just do that.
And that's it. That's our 30 seconds. We're done.
Yeah, they just unfortunately had a bit of a hiccup. We are talking about sometimes, with IT systems, they don't always go to plan. So it actually had a bit of a hiccup, and it comes up with saying, unable to generate. So what happens then is you just click the button again, and it will just go off and do it. As we like to assume that technology always works, it doesn't always. Sometimes internet connections drop and things like that. So. And as you can see, we've got different words come up. Now, one of the other... Sorry, go on.
So you say this is sort of trained on the entire internet. So what's it doing now? It's going off and it's looking for blog posts, content, anything that's basically been written that includes the keywords that is it looking at phrases as well? Is it looking at the entire kind of long tail keyword? Is it looking for just keywords? Is it looking...
Okay, we are having a little bit of a hiccup today. Let me go back to some content we did develop earlier. I will, for some reason, it's going through. But thankfully I had pre-organized some content for us before. No, what it's actually doing, it's not actually doing that at all. What it actually is doing is creating the content fresh. So it is not curating it. It's not templated. It's not being able to. So it's, in fact, it will actually pass a plagiarism because it is actually fresh content each and every time.
Right.
And as like us humans who can get bored writing about the same topic over and over again, it doesn't get bored. In fact, you can use the same keywords over and over again because each and every time you actually get 3 new pieces of content. So this is the first one that it generated before.
So there's no word limits on it. You can sort of set your word limits and that sort of thing.
It actually writes. We've actually pre-formatted it with when you click on a particular one, it actually has some, estimated, make them approximately this long. But you'll see when I actually go and click on some of the other ones that we actually created before we actually had the session, that it actually, then they're varying lengths. It writes as what's needed for the piece of content. The same as we do as a human, and it's very much the same as us as humans. So this is the second piece of content that it generated previously.
So what were the search terms for this piece?
This was the one that we were generating before we started. So this is actually the same terms about the marketing agency using AI to write marketing content.
Right, cool.
So this is what came up before, which is
so it's actually referencing different AI tools. So just for people sort of digging into what the content's actually finding.
Yeah. One thing to note though with this is because it actually is a completely it creates things, and this is the third one. People and companies, and sometimes tools, although tools are not so much, it will actually create. It may actually generate a person. So always suggestion is if there's a quote or a person in there, just go and check that it's a real person before you go putting it into your piece. And if it's not, you can then swap it out with somebody, like either yourself or a customer or something like that, or get a quote that's appropriate for it. And here's the third one.
So that's it might come up its own quote and create new people.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's actually the reason why when we go back to the homepage, the reason why we actually talk about inspirations as opposed to inspirational quotes up here as one of the options, because we can't call them inspirational quotes because they're actually generated new each and every time. But the thing that the probability though with 5 to 20 words can be sometimes you actually may find that somebody else has said something the same or similar. So again, we always just suggest that you check first to make sure before you adopt it as your own quote. But you're most welcome to then actually use it as your own quote at that point. But let's try a quick Facebook post, just see if that works. And I'll show you the differences between that one.
Yeah, it's super interesting stuff. So, amazing to think that we can actually generate this amount of content just from a couple of keywords.
This is my favorite one. So it is it's the equivalent of us sitting down and writing it as we go through it. And it will, you can use the same. Part of the reason why we have ours, that it allows you to reuse the same terms over and over again, is because you can literally use, once you've actually worked out content that people will actually be interested in, you can just keep using those terms over and over, and you will get unique content each and every time.
Wow.
So there's a first one.
Wow. So that image is just so the image is just like a placeholder image to show you what a post would look like for Facebook. And
we've got some, what have we found is a lot of people have to understand content in context. And so this is, you probably noticed, we've got little sort of making it look like a Facebook, sort of your name. It's to give the illusion of a Facebook post for people, because some people, there's one I was looking for, it even brings back emojis at times in the Facebook ones, because that's how people do emojis. Do Facebook posts. it's just eventually we are looking at bringing images in, and so it will help to select images for you. But in the short term, as much as anything, it's about giving people the content in context, because out of context, people don't always necessarily get how it's going to necessarily look. So that sort of thing. And it will understand, call to action and things like that.
Wow.
So yeah,
just reading through some of the content. It's very cool. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can imagine for people that they're not great at writing, or they just don't have that time to be creating content today in different platforms, and set up a couple of keywords and just come in here and click a few buttons every day and have decent. I mean, this must be amazing for SEO and that kind of thing as well, for blog posts, right?
Absolutely. And if you put the SEO terms into and request, it to write an article with those SEO terms. Now, we're saying that it is writing unique, and as I mentioned, sometimes it will write content that's related to the topic but not exactly the same topic. Then you just go and put those SEO terms back in a way, because you can edit the content. Now, the other thing about it too is also one of the other challenges people have is planning. So I think you were saying you could sit down and write all the content at once. Once you've done that, you can then just drag it on and visually that you've got content for the entire month, and that sort of thing as well. But we try to make it nice and easy for people.
Yeah, amazing. And so we just sync this up to our own LinkedIn profiles. So for Facebook, does it go to pages, profiles, all that stuff?
It doesn't connect yet. At this moment, you've got to still copy and paste across and do it the way you would any other content that you're creating. That is coming. But what it's designed for, I mean, ultimately, this is not an automation tool, as I mentioned before. This is a productivity tool. So it's about streamlining the process. And when you mentioned about, people who don't know how to write and that sort of thing, it's fantastic for them, but it's also really good for people who actually are, really good at writing, because it gives you an ability to fast track it. Because even if you're a really fantastic writer who has 2 to 3 hours to write a good piece of, or even half an hour to an hour to write a good piece of content sometimes when you're running your business. So this can fast track that for you and give you ideas. One of the other big things that we've found with a lot of people is they can use it to generate ideas for future content and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you've got which is called the blog starter. I think as that thought starter, that idea starter. I think it's brilliant for that as well. I mean, you come in, you've just got every day, you've got a couple thousand words kind of pre-written, and you can just then get to edit it. And really brilliant for that thought starting process, or also just to kind of plug the gaps, right? We might love to write, and we might love to sit for a couple of hours and write one in-depth, beautiful blog post a week. But then for the other 7 days, if we just want to get some content out that still is very good and is distinct, we could use something like this to get that going. So very, very valuable, very super cool stuff, and awesome to see it functioning and working as quickly as it does as well. Really cool stuff. So who do you tend to work
also with? Doing too.
Sorry, no, carry on.
Yeah, I was just going to say some of the things that we're also extending it with. This is our shared platform. So this is designed for the small business. To answer your question, this one's for small business and entrepreneurs and 1 or 2 person. But we're also working with some bigger, bigger organisations like just sort of your 10 to 200 size organisation that needs that. Coming back to what you said before about the voice, we can create a LinkedIn post with your voice, like that one I mentioned before about the story idea. And we're starting to work with some bigger organisations where we put particular content types into their environment, plus these ones, but they now have something that is worked in their particular voice. So that gentleman that I mentioned, he absolutely loves writing, but it does take him 2 to 3 hours to write that story, each time. And for him to write several times during the week, it's it's a huge time cost for him. So we're looking at developing a specific content type for him to put in his environment so that he can then get most of the grunt work done, and then he'll be able to do it. Another use case in that sort of mid-tier ones is lawyers, being able to convert legislation or technical documents and things like that into easy to read and understand language and that sort of thing. So instead of having highly paid lawyers spending time writing, sort of trying to do that conversion, which really, when all said and done, is not their expertise anyway, into easy to understand marketing language. The AI can do the grunt work, and the lawyer then just verifies that the information is correct.
Well, so many use cases, and so to say, there's a lot of use cases, but it's that doing that grunt work. If I can come into this on a Monday and create 7 different pieces of content or 20 pieces of content, schedule it out, and then every day I've just got to check in, make sure that it sounds okay, and post it. It's going to save me a lot of time. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that intersection of using the best of both, using the AI to do the grunt work and to reduce the timing, but having the finesse and the expertise provided by the human.
So we still get to exist, people. We still get to use what we do well. The robots aren't coming for all our jobs just yet. We can give them the tedious shit that we don't want to do, and sit creation and all that good stuff that we're really good at, right? That's what our brains are great at, is connecting far-flung ideas and creativity and inspiration. And if we can layer that on top, like you say, and layer that on top of 30 hours of research and just writing, and that's pretty cool. Good to hear it's not replacing us just yet.
It's actually not doing the research. It's actually because it's pretty much, as I mentioned before, around the body of knowledge. It's already got an existing body of knowledge, so it's not going out and researching per se. But you can also inject your research in. So if you've got particular research in, you can provide that as the base material, base information, and it will build information around that. So an example, when talking to another organization where they collect stories from their community all the time. And so they want to actually, because they post these stories daily, as you can imagine, that's a huge content time sink for them. So they'll be able to collect the stories from the community, put in a few dot points. So it'll be a slightly different interface than the one I showed you, but they'll put in a few dot points, and it will generate the 2 or 3 versions of that story for them using the information that they provided. So they're providing the information, and sort of this, and then it's creating the bulk of it, and then they can just touch it up and publish it.
Yeah, cool. Actually, that was what was going to be one of my questions, is somebody who might be a really niche expert, right? Someone who's kind of got a very nuanced, kind of very, very niche industry, or something that maybe isn't all over the internet. Maybe it's academic or kind of more research paper, very specific, or novel information that there's not much of. So I could then come in and say, here's my research paper, here's my white paper, here's my PDF, here's all of my stuff, and kind of use that as the knowledge base. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Out of the box, no, but if you come and talk to us, we can absolutely do that. But just to give you an example of a really niche one that does work, then I have got this to work in the platform. There was a gentleman who actually installs pools. So, does a lot of pool installations and things. But he used to be a Disney character. He used to be one of those people that's dressed up in Disney characters. And so we actually got the AI to write at least the beginning of an article, and I will say it needed a bit of editing and that sort of thing afterwards, but it wrote all about escapism and the magic of Disney and why you go to Disney and everything as the beginning of the part of the blog starter, and then transitioned into, and wouldn't it be fantastic to have that each and every day at home by installing a pool in your own backyard, and you can have the magic of Disney each and every day. And it did the transition.
Wow, that's amazing. That is very, very cool. Yeah, that's a pretty subtle writing there to actually have a topic transition, and to sort of understand how to make that that's the sort of thing we imagine that is a human capability. But that's pretty amazing that machine learning and AI can do that.
Look, it definitely needed more work to make it, publishable. Like, it wasn't perfect, but it definitely made the transition, and you could definitely, the elements were there. And he actually had to. We did it as a bit of just to see if it would work, because he had to write a magazine article on this particular topic, and so he was able to take several of the pieces that we did and use them together. Because it's not even a case of you can just use one article on its own. You could build a longer article together, or take elements out of different generations and build something as well. So, but it gave him something to get started on something he was already planning to do.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, super, super cool. Thank you so much for dropping by and sharing simple marketing and the power of AI with us. Been super, super interesting, and yeah, it was great to have the live written and how powerful this content engine can be. If people would like to connect with you and find out more about you, where's the best place for them to come and reach out and connect with you?
Absolutely, the ones that you've got on the screen at the moment. Anyone's welcome to send me a connection request on LinkedIn and reach out to me that way, or connect to us through our Facebook page. If you want to drop me a line and you've got some specific use cases that you just want to sort of geek out on AI and find out how we could actually potentially help you, give us a call. If not, if you just want to find out, how to use AI better in your business, also very happy to help as well.
Awesome, awesome. And you're quite active over on Clubhouse as well.
I am. I must admit, I did take a little bit of a hiatus, and I've had a little bit of my Clubhouse friends going, where have you been? But I tend to be in there. I'm reasonably active. I also run the content marketing club at Clubhouse. So, and it's a great forum for having good conversations around how you can do things better, not just particularly with what you do, but getting that sort of wealth of knowledge, and plus it's also really great for making connections.
Yeah, very, very cool platform. So as always, I'll drop links in the show notes, and you guys can go and get connected to Suzette and learn all about how you can stop writing all of your content, or at least start getting a lot of thought starters, get a lot of the grunt work done. Super, super valuable. Might have to have a conversation once the cameras stop rolling, see how I can get involved and use it, because I could definitely see how it can be beneficial just to churn out bulk amounts of content that's all customized and it's all original. Super, super cool stuff. Thank you so much for dropping by and sharing simple marketing and AI with us. It's been really fun.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a blast speaking with you today.
Pleasure. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And if you did listen to the audio version of this, do go back and check out the episode over on YouTube, which will be in the show notes, and go find out, watch it live so you can sort of see the example of how the platform works, because it was very, very cool. So never mind. Thank you. Thanks, Suzette. Thanks for being here, and we will see you on the next episode.